All right, so as I grew up, I underwent a lot of phases, and mainly because I was confused. So I'm gonna give you a little picture of that. So 2001, 15 years ago. Right, so I didn't think I was Batman yet. Yeah, so I was deluded enough to think that. So when I was in elementary school, grade 2, playing catch with my friends, I would hypothetically imagine Alfred's calling me on the phone, right? And we'd be like Master Bruce, we have someone for you to catch. And I'm actually in conflict, right? Like Alfred, I'm playing catch, man. What are you doing? Just tell me where are they? Move on. So I was deluded so much into this, and I was into it. And as I grew up, obviously, it became more mature. It became a serious problem because I started reading books, movies, and I actually started acting these characters, and I became them. So moving on to 2009, right? Now this is not the hip hop Big Has had loved, right? This is not socially conscious hip hop, right? This is the dark side, and I was into the dark side. I loved it. So we're talking about violence, misogyny, pride, ego, money, success, all the things that he mentioned, and all the explicit content. But that really, to me, the epitome of man, or epitome of manhood, to me, was being a rapper, right? And everything that included, to me, that was what I identified myself with. And that was an issue because when you really think about it, I mean, the fan base of hip-hop culture is huge, right? You have 7-year-olds till people go as much as 30 and even more. And it's like millions of people. But despite this, I thought I was part of a mafia gang, right? And it was exclusive membership, just me. So when I always walked, people would ask me, so what are you? The first thing I wanted to tell me is, what do I listen to? So I tell them I listen to hip hop, horrorcore. This is what I identify myself with. But if someone tells me, what's your religion, where you're from? I did not find my loyalty as cool to these things as cool as I was being a hip hop fan. So to me, being a hip-hop fan meant more than saying I'm a Muslim. What is that? That's not cool, right? But we say I'm a hip-hop, that shows character, empowerment. So that's where I got my power from and how I viewed things in general. And that's not, I'm not saying hip-hop is a bad thing, right? But for me, specifically that part of that culture, that dark culture, for me, that was the problem. Because I thought, to me, I wasn't finding myself, and you'll see that later on. So then moving on, I think 2011, right? 2011, that was a fun year. I met House MD. House MD, as I watched that show, and everyone who knows Gregory House, the character, this is a depressed sociopath, very much in pain person, and he's a doctor. So everything is just absurd. It doesn't have a bigger picture than what it is. It's just, you have a sick patient, you fix it. Life has no other meaning other than that as well. So everything was just confined to this limited, cynical view that he had. And so obviously, naturally, I just took that up and I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to look at the world as well, right? Everyone's dark. Humanity, the reality of humanity is a bad thing, and ignorance is bliss for you guys, but I'm not ignorant because I know the reality, and everyone's a dark piece of, you got what I mean? So it's just, that's how I viewed things at a certain point for a long time, actually. And one of the major decisions I took because of House MD was I decided I'm going to be a doctor because of a show. I went to Canada to study medical sciences because if I'm depressed, and yeah, I was depressed because of House, or I thought I was, and I'm in pain because life is pain and it's a struggle being a privileged high school student. And so naturally, I just have to be a doctor, right? That's what made sense to me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. I go to Canada, and the first thing I noticed about Canada was, by the way, one of the nicest people I ever met in my life, Canadians. Just, they're so nice. They're always smiling to you. And I was, at the time, fortunately, having this mindset. So I was like, where's the darkness? What is this? Why are you so happy? You don't mean that. Why are you smiling to me? So I was being a little bit of a sociopath myself. So, and I was looking for this darkness. I was looking for anyone that sees the things I see. And then until I met my roommate, and my roommate said, "Oh man, you're just like me. You have everything. We think the same way. We like music, the dark music. We also see humanity as hopeless, and everything was perfect." And so I thought, I found my clone, and that's what he said. He's like, "You're like my clone, buddy." You're like, yeah, we're exactly the same. So until a few years later, I began to realize, or not actually a few years, this same year, when moral choices had to happen in Canada, to me. And I started having to have a position. He was asking me, do you drink or not? Would you do this or not? Would you go to these places or not? And, things that you actually, you get these answers from your principles that you have. And I started noticing that I don't really have these answers. These answers don't actually exist in the mindset of a Gregory House mindset or a hip-hop fan. And I started realizing I'm not actually a clone of this guy. I'm just a mirror of whatever is around me in terms of postmodern world media.
I'm a nobody. I have no personality, I have no identity, and I realized my principles don't actually exist. And that happened when I was pushed to my limit, when I had to make extreme, serious, critical, moral choices. You realize the only way you would choose this or that is based if you have a principle. And where's that principle? Supposedly, it's supposed to be in your religion or your character, and I didn't find it. It was gone. So I came back here to Dubai. I was like, okay, we got to think straight. We got to know, where am I? Where do I stand exactly in these matters? And so the first thing I did, which was very critical, was that I had to unbecome everything I became. And so I removed all these characters, all these personas, the Batman, all that, all these fan bases I was part of. I'm just like, okay, on a white page, where do I stand? Who am I? And I had to actually answer that question because I had to find ground. And so the first thing I thought of was, okay, I want to look at nationality, right? I come from Egypt, and I also I lived in the UAE for half my life. And so naturally, I would look at the cultures and traditions over there, but I wanted to go deeper than nationalistic pride. I'm not just going to resort to myself. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You can do that. But to me, I wanted to go more. I wanted to have more firm roots in something. So I looked at religion. Now, I'm a Muslim, right? Or at least that's how I identified myself with, but I was not proud to identify myself with myself being a Muslim. The one thing was probably a hip-hop fan or a Gregory House mindset. So when I looked at religion, I was like, okay, let's make some observations. I was starting to critically look at it, and I started noticing two parties. So one party was, people are Muslim right here. They do the rituals. They pray, they wear the veil, they do the fasting, the usual physical components we know about. And however, at the same time, they're completely okay, complacent with whatever global trends is happening around them. So it's completely fine, right? I mean, there's a new trend of a movement, an idea of womanhood, for example, manhood, and you see people are going with that, or new ways to dress, and people are going with that. But again, we keep the physical components of the religion, but the principles are hidden. They're not there. But the ritual is. So the veil is present, but why are we wearing it is not really there. I can't really see the answers. So things like that, that's a trend to notice in one particular group. And the other group, which is a little more the other side, was people in a cage, pretty much, isolated, protected. These people, they say we practice their religion, and they do. They practice the core values. The principles are there. However, it's in a cage. It's not, I can't see it. I have to go to these people directly to get an answer and tell them, okay, tell me about what are you doing, why are you doing, and they will have the answers. But again, it's enclosed in a place. It's not actually mingling with the global conversation, right? So there's a missing gap here. And I thought naturally, the Quran, if I read the primary text, which is the Quran, where's the slide? All right, so the Quran, right? This is the book I want to look at. And I said, okay, naturally, I guess, some of them, like this, I'm talking about major groups here. This is my whole life. I'm talking from since I was born till I was 18 or 19. These are the only two people I see. I never saw any other group. So when I look at them critically, I think, well, one of them has to be right? You can't be wrong. I mean, everyone does this. So if I read the primary text of the Quran, I would get an answer. Either this one or this one. And that's where I want to be. I want to have a ground. So I read the book. And I don't read it by finishing it 5 times in Ramadan. I don't mean that. I mean critically reading the book, knowing what it actually means, which is something I realized that I was actually pioneering in. When I was telling people, I'm understanding the Quran, like, oh, wow, mashallah, that's great. But if I were telling I'm reading it 20 times a week or something, I'd be more impressed. But I thought I needed to understand this book. So I actually studied it 1 year, by myself, through actually iPhone applications, over a year and a half. Now, after I finished the book, all I can tell you is these groups are not there, and this one is not there. It was surprising to me. The real answer was that what my religion, now this is personal experience, I'm not saying I'm imposing on this on anyone, but from what I realized is that my principles have to be in a middle ground kind of fashion. It didn't tell me to be complacent about whatever's happening around you and just go with the flow. It didn't tell me to stay quiet and just practice and don't mind everyone around you. It told me to have ideas, to have a conviction on something. And once you have that conviction, you grow it into yourself. That's power. You validate yourself as an individual, and then you come out. And then you come out and you make a conversation. And then you speak about it. You have a say on things. And that's power to me. That was character. Because I realized it's not about just, oh guys, I'm practicing my fasting now. I'm such a good Muslim. I fast 30 times a day. I fast twice a week, like the Sunnah. It wasn't that. It was more. It was about having an idea, having ability to have a conversation with people. Even in the Quran, there's a verse, "Hatu burhanukum in kuntum sadiqin." Bring me your proofs if you're truthful. It's encouraging, global conversation with people with different ideas. It's encouraging that. The Quran is not scared to have a conversation, but people, unfortunately, deemed it okay to pose it as a religion that's so insecure to have a conversation with people because we might be so doubtful about our stances and our beliefs that we're going to end up saying, oh, okay, I guess Islam is not the truth anymore and just move on. No, listen, the Quran does not ask that. The Quran tells you have to know where you stand. And that's why you don't talk to people before you know who you are. And that's exactly what I did wrong. I went out there and I took every single mask I could find except my religion. And when I did that, my religion obviously seemed like it was just a cultural phenomena, like that was very popular 1,400 years ago. But when I went back, I realized it was the opposite. I had to actually find the religion first before everything else. So even when you think about Islam, like in the Quraysh, the origin where it happened in the peninsula, in the Arabian Peninsula, when the message came and people were told, okay, you got to pray 5 times a day, it wasn't like, oh, okay, praying 5 times a day, we got to wage war on these people. It wasn't that. That didn't shake the cages. What shook the cages, what rattled the people at their core were the ideas. The ideas of Islam shook people. We're like, okay, this is going against the norm. We have to do something about this. So today, we did the complete opposite. So I feel like when I'm observing society, the people around me, my peers, my family, my friends, I'm seeing that we're just going towards let's just take the physical components, the ideas and everything. Okay, that's already been done. I don't need to know. We just need to do the acts. Forget the principles. So these are 3 things. These are overall, as I noticed, my family, my friends, my peers, I would categorize them under 3 components right here. And I think this relates to all of us. Not just Islamic conversation. I'm just talking in general. When we talk about having a principle or having something to stand on. The first group of people will always tell you, well, I feel I'm doing this when you ask them something. Like, for example, why are you drinking or why are you not drinking? Why are you wearing a veil? Why are you not wearing a veil? Things like, these cultural questions that are very taboo. And they will give you an answer like, well, my mom and dad did this and that. Or my mom and dad taught me this and that. Or my religion tells me this and that. So I feel like this is the right thing to do. Or I feel like it's okay to do it, even though it's not the right thing to do. But they feel it. And that word, I hear it so many times. I feel. And that just shows you that your source of principles is tertiary. It's not with you here. It's coming from a different country, right? You and your principle are actually dissociated, but you're not saying that, but it is. And the same thing. So when you look at the people that say I think, now this is better than I feel, but when you go to I think, these people, again, they have their principle. They know where they're coming from, but again, they're not having 100% certainty or 100%, I'm 100%, I guess, confident in whatever they actually believe in, and therefore they'll tell you, I think this is why I'm doing this, that. But again, these 2, I feel and I think, they're dangerous. This is not something we should be at. Because when you're there, when you're doing choices in your life, right, and they're based on these two approaches, you're basically telling me that I don't know who am I yet, and I'm not really sure who am I as a person, so this is just how I'm doing things. And that to me, I used to be like that too, like for 18 years. I used to think that the world is just a dark place, there's nothing good in it. I used to feel like there's no purpose beyond just telling the world that, that we're over and the humanity has become completely ignorant of the realities we have. So I really feel like when you're feeling or thinking, you have dissociated yourself from who you are, bottom line. And then obviously there's the third stage, which is I know, right? When you say I know or I believe in something because I know what it is and I know why. And that's very critical, to know why. Because then if you're not following a trend, right? Because unfortunately, if you don't know why, first of all, you're going to be at the mercy of the new fashion of beliefs and the ideas, the attitudes, the movies, the music, the books. You're going to read and just jump in and be like, okay, let me put this mask on for 1 month or 1 year. Because you're just enslaved to it. You don't have something to hold you back. So when you do know, that changes things. Now, when something comes up, a new book or a new idea or a new movement that comes to me, I say, okay, well, now I have a say on it because I know where I stand. So I tell you why I agree with it. And maybe I could take it in, right? It's like you're an invisible force field. You take in what you want, whatever works with your ideas, and what doesn't work, you push it out. And you say why. You don't just stay quiet and just say, no, I don't do that. Why? I'm a Muslim. What? Why are we so insecure? We have the answers. I have answers personally with my principles. I have answers for everything, and that's great. I'm happy. So now I can deal with it. I can have a global conversation. And I think a lot of people, when they hear this talk, at first they're like, oh, I'm just asking for closed-mindedness. I'm asking for these kind of, like, the caged kind of people. I'm not asking that. And the prime example to prove this is Malcolm X. So when I look at Malcolm X, yeah, there we go. So Malcolm X. When we look at Malcolm X, this guy, he encompasses my presentation pretty much, the idea of what I want people to be, or I want to be like him more. And what Malcolm X did is that he had a conviction from day one. Now, I don't agree with his his initial convictions, which was basically the white man's the devil, the black man is the son of God, and or the people, the worshipers of God. And so they had to segregate to get equality, but that was obviously extreme. But this is what his conviction was. His idea at his core was that we want justice. We want people to be equal in the world today, and we need to fight for that right. And so that was his initial conviction. He had that principle. He stood his ground. So what he did was he went to Mecca. He went to Mecca and he found Islam, the real Islam. So he looked and he was like, can you imagine someone striving for justice? And when you strive for something like women's rights or, again, justice, or something like those, abstract ideas that you're fighting for, it's a utopia that you will never going to reach anyway. You just know you're not going to reach it, but you're trying. And that's the whole point of it. But Malcolm X, he's the only exception in that case, because he went to Mecca and he was like, whoa, there's an Asian, there's an Indian, there's a black, there's a white man, and they're all together praying in front of one God. What is this? This is the utopia I'm looking for. This is already done. I've been fighting for 30 years about this, and it's already here. The solution is here. So what he did was he had a principle. He found something new that the world offered, right? Like for us today, it's like taking out a phone and looking at the news or looking at other beliefs. Malcolm X had to go to Mecca because he didn't have that luxury. So he goes back to his country. He's like, guys, I found utopia. I found equality, the real justice. And it's like, okay, so how do you do it? It's like, well, I'll just become a Muslim. So to him, he found a principle, he had a principle, and he found the answers. And he went and he took what works with him and he took it back. If he found something that didn't work with him, he would have left it. But today, what we do is that we take whatever everyone likes. If there's 1 billion hits on a song, then this is going to be my favorite song because I have no opinion whatsoever and I have no outlook on anything, but I just follow whatever's good out there because they tell me so. That is not power to me. That is you're just a follower, and you're not validating yourself as an individual, and you are definitely not localizing yourself in a globalizing conversation or whatever you want to call that. That is just pure weakness. And so when I think about that, we have to give ourselves the opportunity to know that we deserve to individualize ourselves as people, as our personalities. It deserves some justice. We need to dig it up. Now, you're not going to become someone overnight because that doesn't just come on the front door. You don't just go online and like, okay, House, I love this show. I'm going to be House. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to dig it up. You have to know where you want to look for. So I personally looked at Islam. I wanted to find myself as a Muslim. This is how I want. Some people can define themselves through a book, through a philosophy, whatever works for you, but stand your ground. Don't just be floating around whatever people take you like the wind. So, with that being said, I think today as a Muslim, I have views that I have to have a say on, and I think people deserve to hear me, and I know I am valid, and I have to say these things, and I don't have a voiceless voice because I have a voice, and so if I'm quiet, the news will make the opinions for me. Right? Because I identify myself now as a Muslim, so there's a new dilemma because the whole world now takes the views of Muslims through the media because no one speaks. So if you're not going to speak about who you identify yourself with, know that you're going to get someone else speak for you, and maybe you won't like what they say, but then you start complaining. So we got to make up our mind. Who are we today? And we got to say something about it. Have a global conversation, not be a passive participant, but be an active participant in the global phenomena today of trends and all that. And thank you. Yeah.